everyone. Welcome to the second edition of Frontend Lightning Talks this year, 2022. Post-Corona period, I hope everybody is safe and vaccinated. Unfortunately, we could not do this hybrid mode. We planned to do this event this time in the office, but I promise you next time we shall go in real and not the PPT mode. This time we have a front-end architecture topic, and we have three presenters, three speakers. Before introducing them, I have a small announcement that all the questions, whatever thoughts you have in your mind, please put them on the chat. This session will be recorded and later on put up on the YouTube. You can also follow us on the YouTube for our previous talks. If you're not familiar with your face sharing, you can also put your camera off. Don't be shy. You can always share your face. And please, if you're not speaking, then please mute your mic. I'm your host, Ankit Raghuvanshi. This time, I'm from Frontend Lightning Talks organized by Frontend core team at Sogesti, and I'm from the core team along with my few other members. What we want to achieve from this talks are interactive sessions, some inspiring and informal sessions, which we always try for. We work for different clients with different companies, and we have different speakers from also working for different companies, completely different topics every time, and we try to make this always interactive. What is the program timeline today? As I'm speaking now, I'm doing the welcoming part, and afterwards we have Micro-Frontends with Modular Federation done by our very well-known Frey. Then we have making sustainable choices in your front-end architecture. Again, our very known face by Emiel Kwakkel. Then we have a short break in between. We have seen through our past experiences that we need some break in between. Then we have our last topic of the day. It's also very cool topic, modular front-end architecture with ROCA. It is done by Gaurav, Sehrawat. And then we have closing questions where we can have drinks and some chat about the talk of today. Before moving to our talk, we are from, as I said, we are from Sogeti. This is not any sales pitch or something, but we do a lot of work for our clients. You name any client and we have it. And we organize these Frontend Lightning Talks from our core team for everybody. It's free to join and anyone can join these sessions. It is also not only for the front end. We also have Java, cloud, automation, and testing. Everything is done by our company. They also have their own talks. If you see, we have clients which everybody from our team or even you are also working. So our presenters, Frey, who is speaking on Micro-Frontends with Modular Federation. Second is Emiel Kwakkel, and third is Gaurav Sehrawat. Before starting up the talk, I will just give you a slight look ahead about the next topic. We have different subjects every time. I'm in between people. We have different subjects, different speakers every time, and we have a new studio developed. So hopefully next time we will see us in the studio at Frey and Sogeti. Feel free to contact us. There is a small feedback form. We are not asking any personal information or something, but just to help us to improve us. I will share those links in the chat while we are having the discussions. So without wasting any another minute, I'll give the stage to Daniel Frey with his talk. Daniel.
So, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me once again. I'm super excited to talk about my topic today. So, hello everybody. I hope you're doing great. I know you cannot see my slide yet. I just want to see a little bit of faces and names. Yeah, I hope you're safe and also enjoying, if you're in the Netherlands, the weather. And yeah, gonna talk to you about a really nice topic. So I hope you're ready. Let me just go ahead and put up my face and the presentation. Just a little bit the size so everybody can see the presentation with my face on the side.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Once again, I hope everybody has a nice day today. And if not, maybe I might just get your day a little bit better with the picture of a nice puppies here. So yeah, we're gonna talk about micro-frontends. Let's begin, and it's gonna be in this talk. Really, my point of doing this is just to give you an introduction on micro-frontends. What are they, and just also a little bit about the Webpack's Module Federation plugin. So before I start, I just want to get to know a little bit the audience and see, did anybody here, please just raise your hand or just put in the chat me or whatever that heard about the micro-frontends before. If you did, just put like in the chat or just raise your hand. Heard about it, saw something about it online. All right, all right. I see some people putting their hands up and saying yes. All right, cool. And did anybody here, okay, now everybody put their hands down. Hands down. A little bit of introduction to get to know you guys. So did anyone had implemented in their company or just in their fun time Module Federation plugin and using micro-frontends and just for fun? No? Okay, Emil. All right. Is the only person here, I think. Okay, good, good. So I'm gonna maybe help you to those who didn't to get to know and maybe get you excited for that. Okay, so before I do that, let me introduce myself. Who am I? I'm Daniel Frey. I'm originally from Israel. I'm working currently at IO, which is a consultancy company in the Netherlands, working as a senior front-end developer. I'm also content creator at danielfrey.me. You can find my podcast, doing some writings, and just really anything about technology and in our field that is related to front end or back end. I also love meeting and collaborating with people. So if after this talk you're curious to get to know me more and have any ideas on collaborating and maybe do a podcast recording together, please feel free to reach out. I love that to get to know new people. I'm also passionate about accessibility and UX UI. And you can also follow me on my social media. So Daniel Frey 101 is my Twitter. You can also find me on LinkedIn, which I'm really active on as well. It's just Daniel Frey. All right, so yeah, before we dive into any topic, we need to understand the history behind it, right? These days, almost every day or every hour, there is something new coming up on the tech industry, whether it's a new JavaScript framework, whether it's a new way of doing something. And before we're just being, like a baby looking at it and thinking, oh, this is amazing, this is the next thing. Let's understand a little bit of history. So and in order for that, I wanted to identify some of our goals whenever we basically want to build an application that is scalable. So first thing is fast and predictable delivery, maintainable code base, checked, the ability to scale our team and our technology, and keep up to date with the recent technologies and picking up the right tool for the job, right? Some basic goals there, I know. But yeah, we're gonna build on top of that story, and to continue with that story, what is the traditional way right now is basically, if you look to our right, we have the front end with this example is just a monolith front end. We're using React, and on the left side we have the back end using microservices architecture. So in most companies that I've worked at the bank, worked at startups, different companies, and really this is the traditional right now. So you have this microservices architecture, and basically microservices in a really small nutshell is just a place where each API is serving one specific business case. And then, yeah, once again, we have this big monolith front end. Now you might be thinking microservices and micro-frontends, you might see some connection. Well, let's hold on to that thought. So let's see what are some of the struggles that we currently have with monoliths on the front end. So first thing is technology lock. So I put here dear old Angular. And yeah, I'm not talking about the current Angular. So let's just say an example where we chose Angular JS, which is the old Angular, back in 2010. That is most likely going to be the technology of choice for the entire lifetime of this application, like given we have an application. And what if then objectively there is a better tool for a certain job? Or what if the technology advances? So how would we go ahead around that, right? With the current setup. Another thing is single deployment. So communication overhead, releases need to be coordinated carefully. The application is more likely to break due to other teams' work, which affects delivery. Third thing is maintainability. So maintaining a big application is more difficult than maintaining a smaller one. More moving parts and intervened dependencies resulting in difficulties to introduce changes. And the last part is process overhead. So the process of introducing changes becomes tiring. Minor decisions become major, and as they also affect the other teams. So teams need to communicate closely before making certain changes, and this obviously costs time. So here you go. This is what we currently basically the four main struggles that we have, right? So the technology log, the single deployment, and the maintainability and the process overhead, all in one big application. But what is the solution, Daniel? So I knew all of that, right? Maybe you knew that, probably suffered from that as well. So then let me show you something. So now you can see this this website of mine, which is basically, let's say, a demo app that I built, which is going to be available on my GitHub as well. You have the link to play with it. Don't worry about it. And what you can do with it, you can like the cards. You will have them appearing right there on top, and the number is updating. I know, very nice, right? You can click on the cards, and then you'll get more information about that episode. You can play the episode, and if you click read more, you will have basically that the link to that to that episode. You can go into the checkout place and just like click checkout, and it will just clear your cart. So it's kind of a e-commerce for buying episodes, which doesn't really make sense, I know, but it's just for the example, so stay with me. But yeah, this is what the app is doing. And yeah, what if I told you that these were 4 separate websites? Those websites shared the routing, they even shared the liking card state, and I could deploy every single one of those websites independently of the others, and the changes will reflect immediately. I know, right? So I know it's confusing, but then let's take a look at where the game changes, and it changes here, where I have the header and the footer, which is under its own repository, home. And I also have the mini cart, which is in the like cart repo. I have the media player, which is part of the player repo. And I also have the episode content, which is part of the content repo. And even the like button, this small thingy, is also part of the like cart. So it results in something like this, where you could, if you would want that, and if it makes sense, to have basically 4 separate teams. So let's say we have a team for the homepage that uses something from the episode details page or team. So we have basically different chapters. We have the gallery chapter, then we have the content chapter, the checkout chapter, and the media chapter, which in itself could also, if wanted to, use a different technology and would still work all together. Now, the question if you want to do that or not, that's another thing, and what's best practice there. But you could have that so that they don't have to be dependent of each other. Now, this is micro front ends. This is what we get with that. But versioning is tough. So just these are basically the 4 different repositories that I just showed you. Those 4 different projects, which are hooked up in a certain magical way, right? Like you might be thinking, did you use npm packages there? Or, if I did say use npm packages, right? I would then, if I wanted to deploy, I made a change in the content now, the content team made a change and they want to deploy it. I would have to basically have content deployed. I would have then all the websites or the projects that are using them as dependency would have also to be redeployed. And again, you guys know how difficult managing dependencies are, and just imagine then doing that for, thousands of team members, like teams and projects. So it's tough. So where comes Webpack Module Federation. So what is it? So let's play with it a little bit. Let me try to explain where that comes in. So I'm going to pause this video. And basically, just to let you know what I'm going to show here is that I wanted to update the header, right? And we mentioned if I do that with npm packages, what do I have to do? I have to redeploy 2 different, the projects that are using it as a dependency, but then also the dependency itself. But then here, basically what happens is that in runtime, I get with Webpack Module Federation, I get the update. So here in the example, you can see there is a hello in the header of the content page of the content project, because you see also in the browser on top, there is like says content on the right. And I just updated from the header project, I updated the title. So here I'm going to change it. I'm going to change it back to welcome to DanielFrey.me talks. I saved it in my I saved it in my editor, and as you can see, it just updated. I didn't have to redeploy or do anything, right? And how it worked was from the Webpack config.js. I have some fields that I'm filling in basically I'm in the content project or in the content repository, and there I have the Webpack config.js folder, or again the file, and there I have the remotes, and I have also what I'm exposing, and there basically the magic happens, you can say. Right. So let me go ahead and show you how it looks like a little bit more in depth. So again, the remotes is basically what you're using remotely, so what you want to consume in your application, and what you expose is what the other basically the other projects can use. So obviously here you can see localhost, and ideally it would be, of course, if you're going to production, it's not going to be localhost, but this is again for the example. And there I can basically put what I'm consuming in my project, and then in the exposes part, I put what I want the other projects to use. Right, this is just a really small overview to let you know what's happening a little bit behind the scenes. What I do want you to get from this is that you can do that basically, not exactly how the details are. So just that you have a general idea, right? Great. So how does importing work? You might be asking yourself. So again, this is a React project, and this is how it worked there basically, and should work in any other. I just import it normally, like you would import any package. And you notice here that I have home/header, right? And there I get the header and then the content. And how do I know, which name to use? Basically, in the remotes, you put a key, right? That is the key that you need to use throughout your applications when you want to import them. And that's the keys that we are using there as well. Now, I know it's been a lot, so let's review. So before, again, we had this communication overhead, the single deployment thingy, the Angular JS if we want to change, it would be really difficult. And also the maintainability issues that you would have. Although now you might have those, same problems, but let's say we minimize them. By the way, somebody's not muted, so please mute yourself. Thank you. So now basically it's decommissioned to the level of the team. So if you wanted to make changes and you wanted to, to now update something, you have now a small component, really like a small application, and that's all you need to worry about. So that's much easier to maintain, to deploy, to make changes to, and you also don't have to think about too much about versioning, right? Now, you might be asking yourself as well, who uses Micro-Frontends? Now, again, this is Micro-Frontends, not saying Webpack Module Federation. So these are some of the big companies that are using that as their architecture. I'm not sure if they're using on, or are they intending to going to use the Module Federation plugin. So perhaps they will, but there you go. You have also a little bit of a background around that. So concerns. Let's talk a little bit about them, because obviously I don't want you to think that this is a perfect solution. And again, it needs to be really making sense for your company to do that. And when I been introduced to Micro-Frontends, it was also at ABN AMRO, where we do work, by the way, with Micro-Frontends architecture, not with Module Federation yet. I guess they might be doing that in the future. But obviously there are some concerns, and I'm going to touch upon them. So you might be thinking, right, when I was developing this project, I was thinking, aren't I importing packages more than once? So like I have all these like React applications, right? If we're gonna just review this after thingy, and aren't I importing it more than once? Like what's happening? So actually not. Like singleton mode is enabled in your Webpack config, which basically says that this thingy here has a shared basically dependencies, and React has a singleton that says to true. Also the React DOM, for example. Just really, you could do that, and then you don't have to worry about things being, have appear more than once. Although, although shouldn't be like such a big concern, right? Because React just weighs almost nothing comparing to all of other stuff that we're doing, right? So that shouldn't bother us too much. But again, if it did bother you, basically you have that enabled, so we got that cleared out. What about TypeScript support, right? Most of our projects that we develop, and when we use React, we're using TypeScript, and I love TypeScript, by the way. I'm not a fanboy of it. There is cases where TypeScript doesn't make sense, like when you want to go fast, but we're not gonna be talking about that. So yeah, is there support for TypeScript? Well, currently it's a little bit tricky, right? So you did see that I did like this thing, like art / like button, but how does it know how to connect between them, right? So basically VS Code team, and also in general like Microsoft, which is responsible for TypeScript, right? They are trying to basically have some things set up to support the Module Federation. But in the meantime, there are some hacky solutions that I found on the internet. Perhaps you would find a better way. If you did, please let me know. But for now, this is what you could do. So you can see I have an error. You couldn't find a module. So what you can do in TypeScript, you can just declare your modules. You can just create this d.ts file and declare these. And then also then for types, right? Because we want to have the types from the certain component that we're using. So in this case, we could also just import types. Basically, in my project, I use Yarn Workspaces. And Yarn Workspaces, if you didn't know what it is, it's basically a way of setting up a monolith front end. But I just said, like, don't go for a monolith front end, right? I know. But the thing is that with Webpack Module Federation plugin, and also the power that you get with monolith, you could combine those two together and just get the best of both worlds. And this is what I did. So for the typing, for example, I needed a solution to connect between them towards all of my application, and to have it consistently communicating between each other, so I don't have to also worry about it. This is how I did it. It's just you can link basically the types. You can read about it also more afterwards. I know this is just a small command that might not explain the whole thing. So again, another point is that no versioning. Great, Daniel. Runtime reload. Yay. But what if the header theme in this instance adds a mandatory prop and I'm not aware of it, right? So let's say, because I said, like, you just saw how I updated the header. I just click save, and ideally it's also working the same when it's on production. You just deploy that single project, and then it goes live on everywhere where it's being used. But what if you are as a header team, you update it now, and people have to give give the title to the header, and before they didn't have to. So your whole app will actually break. So if you don't have error boundaries. So in React, and by the way, this is React specific, so if you're using any other framework, you might need to check for the solution there. But in React, I found error boundaries being really useful here. And there, by the way, has to be class components. So this is actually the only case where in React I've seen that class components are still being used. So an error boundary will basically check if there's any errors in the certain component that you're trying to use. It will load something. So in this case, it checks if the state has any errors, then reload that something went wrong. So it will look like that. You could just wrap your header around the error boundary, and then it will just load like something went wrong. And this is way better that the header is showing something went wrong rather than my entire application basically done, not working, right? So again, pros and cons. So guys, this was it. There are some of the resources that I've used. I'll share them also in the chat, of course. The repository to check my project, the Module Federation plugin from Webpack to read a little bit about it. Also Ariel, my dear friend, also for providing context and reviewing. And also another really nice, basically, article from Luca, which talks about Micro-Frontends always. And I also love this article from him. I don't understand Micro-Frontends, which helped me to understand it. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. I was Daniel Frey, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the chat. I would love to answer any, and also, yeah, later on in the Q&A session.
Thank you, Daniel. And we have a lot of questions for you, and a lot of applause for you. So I will read through one by one. Question number one is from Flores Coach. How does the module federation relate to monorepos, like with Lerna or Turbo repo?
So they don't relate actually. Like the only thing is that in this case, I decided to use both powers of those basically you can say paradigms, or if you want. So basically, it helped me that I have this way, because what does Lerna or Yarn workspaces give us, right? What is the thing that they help us most with? Managing dependencies, right? So so basically, in my case, I wanted to have a way for example, on the TypeScript part, to link between that with my different projects, because currently VS Code, also TypeScript, doesn't really understand or read well the linking, basically the typing, the types, like you saw, it couldn't read the specific, component that I imported. So therefore, I had to use kind of a customized way of doing it. Might as well also help me with, like whenever I run an npm install, so or yarn. So like it installed everything in one place, so help me a little bit to have everything in kind of a one sectionized way. And I still could have used the Micro-Frontends architecture in it, so like have the different repositories out there. Well, in this case, it wasn't really a repository because everything was in one repository. And then you will also see that in Yarn workspaces, you have basically a folder called packages, and there you put the different packages, which was if you remember, the home page, and also there was the media player and stuff like that. So it just really helped me to manage that better. Now, I'm not saying that this is the best practice. Don't get me that way. I do think that there might be different ways of doing it, but this was one of the ways that I saw that to do that.
Thanks. I hope, Flores, your question is answered. I will take two more questions, and then we will save the rest of the questions for the last. Michael says, on production, do you also need different port numbers?
Sorry, different what?
Port numbers.
Port numbers. Good question. I think that that it might not be necessary, because like in my case, I also didn't use it. Was all in I think on the same port. Let me see. I actually didn't try to deploy this thing. Yeah, it was on different ports, I see. So maybe you do need to. That's a really good question because the thing is, if you want to deploy it, I would probably try to go, for example, like a S3 bucket in Amazon. You could just deploy like that single. Basically, you have that remote entry, if you remember. There is basically all your kind of connection to your app that you're exposing goes to everything like the JavaScript, and you can just consume it. And I'm not sure, like, yeah, probably it has to have a certain unique place it to be. So either it's in its own port or it's in its own folder. So it's gonna be like the same, let's say the same port, and then slash, my, I don't know, let's say my homepage, and then my homepage is its own theme, right? And there the slash remote entry, and then basically it's still on the same port, but then you need to have different folders to identify for the remote entry which one you're gonna use. So it's up to you how you architect it, I guess.
Thanks, Daniel. I hope, Michael, your question is answered. I'll take the last one from Edwin, and he says, do you still have to know how module interact with each other or not?
Not sure I understand the question exactly. So
how you still have to know how modules interact with each other.
How exactly do you mean interact with each other?
Edwin, you can pitch in.
Yeah, I can pitch in. So what you're explaining, you're doing the micro-frontends, and they're completely separate, and you can deploy them independently. But yeah, like you said, if you have some interface with another micro-frontend, you still have to know how to interact with it, and you still have to update to abide by that interface, or something will show something went wrong. Now you can handle that. But it feels like if you're combining that part along with doing the yarn workspace, that in essence you are reverting back to the whole monolith part again. So it would feel like this makes sense when there is only limited interaction, or when there are no shared dependencies or whatsoever.
So I can imagine that it may seem that you're going backwards because you're using basically that linking part, right? Where you have to manage that maybe as a dependency. But is that what you mean? Or like, did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, so it feels like, well, it's not a golden hammer, as it were, more that it's a very nice solution if you have components that can work independently of each other. Then it would make sense to do it with a micro front-end way. But things that have to interact a lot with each other, it feels like it makes less sense, because you have to find all these solutions for it, and you would get back to the same monolith way of working again.
Right.
Or is it?
Yeah, I think I get what you are saying. Like, it also depends how you, of course, are gonna architect your application. So you might build things that are not dependent on each other. But like in my example, you have like the cart, right? And the cart has to know what items are gonna be in it from the general store that is shared between them. Now, obviously, there's no way around it that it has to have to know, what is the current state, right? And how is the state being shared? So like there is again a way, it's not a way around it. It's just basically the way to do it when you're going to use, in this case, in this example, it was React with the context API from React, and basically that worked fine. And I wouldn't go ahead and say like it doesn't make sense then to use the micro-frontends or the module federation if they're dependent of each other. I would, however, say that it really depends on how you are architecting it and how you're also communicating within your company on changes. And ideally, if you have also the error boundary thing on, for example, we're really scared that something that things can happen and change, and we really are worried about it. Then we have again this error boundary in React in this example that can handle that something went wrong in that specific place, and then things will not basically affect the other applications that are running. And just fixing that issue is a matter of just like fixing that prop that you missed or that thing that the team updated, and then it's done. So like you don't have to worry about it further.
Yeah, I think we can have more discussion afterwards when we have the closing questions.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Right. Yeah, let's give a round of applause to Daniel for his talk. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, guys.
Next is on the board, Emiel Kwakkel with making sustainable choices in your front-end architecture. Emiel, stage is yours.
Thank you. Also, thanks for all the questions, because I just found out my tests were failing, and I just had enough time to fix the last few tests. So thanks for that. I'll share my screen. Oh wait, I'm going to also use the fancy mode. And then share my screen. Is my presentation visible?
Yes, Emiel. Go ahead.
Cool, thanks. So I think my talk is a little bit of a follow-up on Daniel's presentation. It also comes really close to, or it can be used aside with Micro-Frontend architecture, but my whole approach is more on the sustainability part. So how to make your application or your front-end architecture more sustainable. But why should we actually care? So why should we actually make our applications or our front-end architecture more sustainable? Well, digital technologies are estimated to use about 20% of the world's energy in 2025. So at one hand, we are trying to become more sustainable and use less energy as a society as a whole. And at the same time, we are becoming more and more reliant on IT systems, and the power usage of IT systems is actually growing every year. So pollution of IT systems is really invisible. You don't feel that sending an email or watching a Netflix episode or something like that is actually costing energy and also making an impact on the environment. So it's really hard also to make the right choices. So I think as an industry, as IT, as developers, we also should be acknowledging we are part of the solution. Some of the applications that we are building are making sure that we can contribute to lowering our impact on the climate, but at the same time we are also part of the problem. So we want to make our applications more greener. So I thought let's add some trees and do a little bit of an introduction about myself first. And the nicest way of doing that is actually showing or showcasing my own website. I'm Emiel Kwakkel. I'm front-end lead within Society. I have over 10 years of front-end experience. I worked at ICS, the Rabobank, and the Dutch police. And as a lead, I'm actually assisting in our interaction community within Society as coach, as trainer, or everything else that's actually required from me. So I have a little website with more information about me. You can always look it up, but I was also actually worried about how sustainable actually is my own website. So I did a little bit of a check. This is a really nice website, but it's also a little bit confronting as well if you look at it. Websitecarbon.com, you can just put in your website and it will analyze your website on how much is actually polluting, how dirty is your website. And mine is maybe a little bit over-engineered, so I was already expecting that it would not be the most sustainable website, but this actually kind of shocked me. It is dirtier than 93% of all the web pages tested. And it's just emitting a lot of CO2 for every go. There's one upside. My webpage, my host is actually running on sustainable energy, but I think that's the only upside from the whole analysis. And this is just a small website. So if you are having 10,000 views a month, you would be consuming as much that you would also be able to drive an electric car for about 9,000 kilometers. And to compensate for all of that, you have to plant about 28 trees for just a month worth of visits. And basically, this is just my own little website, but we are building bigger applications. We are building applications for banks, for governments, with millions of page views, with loads of data, which is just far more, has a far greater impact than just this small website. But what I really learned about this is when I was actually building my website, sustainability was not, as you call it, a non-functional requirement. I look at quality, I look at maintainability, I look at things to speed it up, to make it more performant, because that's everything I knew to in the whole development process. So without metrics, you can't actually really improve on things, because I was not aware that the hosting provider or the big images that I'm using as a background is actually also having an impact on the sustainable aspect of your website. So from a small application to a bigger application, I think the more you can do, the more you can save, the more of an impact you can also make in reducing the carbon footprint of your application. So CO2 emissions are mostly, you can categorize it in 3 different sections or stages. Of course, you are emitting or using energy while you are developing your application. It's also using energy when you are deploying it, for example. It's in the data centers, but it's also when you are when your application is live and it's streamed towards the device or the application of the user. It can also consume energy on the device or on the device of the user. So from the development, you have the process of development. So from building to the pipeline to actually the deployment. For example, in the company that I'm working for now at the Dutch police, we are really trying to get the quality up. And in order to do so, we have cron jobs for all sorts of quality checks. So we are running a pipeline, and that pipeline takes about 1.5 hours to complete all the different checks. And we are doing that day and night, also in the weekends, with the idea that we get a lot of data back on how good our application is and if all the tests are actually in the greens. But most of the time we don't work in the middle of the night or in the weekends. So we are, by being a little bit less focused on just the quality and also just only running the cron jobs while we are actually working, we can already save a lot of energy. Also, for example, testing environments, it's really easy nowadays to create a test environment. So a while ago, when I just started at ICS, my first assignment, there was just one test environment and that was it. And now you can just create a test environment just with a few clicks of within a few minutes, you have a whole testing environment set up, which is really easy and really helpful, and it makes you speed up the process a little bit. But at the same time, it's also using a lot of energy for just a small gain. And with development, it's also the efficiency of the whole development process is also really important. So you should always aim to only build or test or deploy the things that are really changed instead of just doing everything all the time. So if you are changing a little button in one small part of the application, there's no need to test or start all the tests for a different part of your application, which is not really affected by your change. So at data centers, you can look at the power usage effectiveness of your host. The lower it is, the greener your data center is, and you can also make sure it's running on sustainable energy. It's also really helpful to go for a host that is local. So if you have a Dutch audience, it might be really cheap to go for an US-based hosting provider, but that will also make sure you have a lot of more kilometers to cross going overseas for every time you are trying to reach those. CDNs are also great. Within your architecture, you can also look at server caching, for example. Varnish or GraphQL can also really help lowering the number of data going over the line and making sure the server is just only doing the strictly necessary things. And the whole footprint of your data center, you can remove a lot of data from inactive users or purge old backups. There's a lot of things you can do to make your data centers more efficient. A little bit of an example for that. This is my own VPS. You can also use, when you don't have good metrics, costs can be a good metric as well. When I got started, my only objective was to have a really performant website. So I chose a really good VPS, but it was really overkill. If you see it, I had all instances, I had backups, I had templates, and it was all live all the time, and it was all costing money, but at the same time, there's also using energy. While it was so much overkill that it didn't really help speeding up the whole application that much. I went to a lot smaller server and the applications were still loading fine, but it was just consuming a lot less energy and a lot less money as well. So it goes hand in hand. And this is also what you get if your only NFR, so non-functional requirement, is quality or performance. You don't really look at things like sustainability because it's just not one of the things you are taking into account. So being aware of sustainability as a non-functional requirement, I think that would be a really good place to get started. And the last part, if you are looking on the device, there are a lot of things technology-wise you can do. Use less JavaScript. You don't need to use a framework for every small application. Some things you can also just do by with plain CSS, for example. You could also split up bundles. I'll showcase that in a minute. There are a lot of other techniques, static web pages, for example, that you only serve already pre-rendered static pages. It's not. You can't do that for every type of application, but for really static front ends, that could be a really useful optimization. You could look at images, you could look at fonts, you can only use videos when really necessary. There are a lot of things you can do. Another fun thing, dark themes is really popular among the developers, of course, but it's also saving a lot of energy. Early 2000s, Google turned this whole website dark on Earth Day. And at that time, we were all using CRT monitors, and those were really using less energy when displaying dark colors. So a lot of people were creating dark applications just to save energy. But then came the new monitors, the LCD monitors, and they had all a single backlight, always on displays. And that didn't really matter if you were showing black, white, green, or blue. It always had the whole single backlight on. So it did not really gain that much traction anymore. The moment OLED screens came into the picture, it really started to making a lot more gains. With OLED, you have pixels or LEDs per pixel, so an RGB LEDs. So the darker it gets, the less the LEDs are actually turned on, so it saves a lot of energy. So overall, there are plenty of options to make your whole application more sustainable, but the main thing is to make it really measurable, to set a non-functional requirement like sustainability and what it actually means for your organization, just like the way we're now already focusing on things like quality, on performance, on those kind of things. And as a developer, you can do a lot of things, small optimizations, big optimizations, but the best thing is if you get your whole organization in line. So if the business is already talking about sustainability, that will translate to architects, that will translate to business analysts, and from there it will also translate to the development teams, to the developers and to the testers. So the more you get in line with that, the more you can get out of it. Then from the technology part of the presentation, I'm going to show off a little bit of a monorepository and Nix architecture, and it has a lot of gains. I don't want to go too much into the monorepositories versus separate repositories. You can combine a lot of things. With a monorepository, you can build a micro-frontend architecture. You can also, all different architectures are possible. But I think the main thing about the presentation is about how to look into making more efficient websites. And it can go with monorepositories, with NX that I'm showcasing right now, but there are a lot of different tools out there as well. So what is actually NX? It's framework agnostic, so you can build Angular, React, Vue, any type of application. It extends the default CLI, so if you stop using NX, everything will still work. It's not completely overtaking your whole application. One of the main cool features is that it's actually caching is being added project-wide. So if I'm building a part of the application and a colleague of mine is also trying to build that same part of the application, it will just get all the information out of the cache, and it will save up a lot of time. It contains a lot of cool parts or cool additions to your application. It will, for example, add Storybook. You can upgrade towards Cypress or to Jest, so it will make sure your whole architecture is a bit more up to date. There are also some pitfalls, but I'll come into that a bit later. This is how it's going to look like. I'll show a live demo of this as well. But the main thing that you can get out of this image is that NX is really supporting or adding the support for an affected analyst. So when you are making a change in a small part of your application, only that small part of the application is affected. So you can really focus your building, your testing, or your deploying on that specific part of the application, making sure you don't need to run the whole pipeline, for example. So here's a little bit of domain-driven design for monorepositories structure, and it's inspired by Manfred Steyer, the Angular architecture domain-driven design setup. He is doing a lot of talks about it, and there's a lot more data or a lot more information about it on the internet as well. So if you're into this kind of setup, just look it up online. I've simplified it a little bit just for to make this a bit easier to grasp. But the thing is that you are actually dividing your applications in domains, and that's the horizontal level. And on the vertical level, you are dividing things in types. So a feature is like a smart component. A UI is a dumb component. A util is something like a service or something that you can just share without any interface attached to it. You can also have things like domains or models, or you can extend it in any different way. But this, I think, is the most important thing, that you are dividing your app organization into different domains. And that's also something that you can you have to really think clever on how to have all these different domains. And adding to that, you also have the possibility to add apps and, for example, have a separate tree app or a banking app if you are a bank that's also doing something with planting trees, for example. I'll just go to the demo because otherwise I think I'm running out of time a little bit, and then see if we can do the end show.
A couple of minutes more.
Couple of minutes, right? Yep. So let's just first show this is the application that I've built. The homepage is not really worth noticing, but the moment I'm actually clicking now on the banking, you'll see that the banking domain is loaded, and you also see that part of this lazy is being lazy loaded, which is cool. So if you are not visiting any part of the planting trees, for example, you're just saving a little bit of bandwidth there. So this is a little bit of a Kickstarter bank, which has two different sections. It has a banking domain and it has a planting tree domain. If I here go to plant trees, I can just see my latest orders, stop orders, and if I plant trees, there will be a call to a GraphQL endpoint. I need to do a little bit of a refresh of the application to actually see the order coming in. But that's basically the whole application. How does it look like for NX? We have here our application, Kickstart Green. There's a trees domain and there's a banking domain. And within the trees domain, you see all the arrows going down. So a plant feature is using a plant UI. The plant UI is using a bit of material UI, and both the plant UI and the plant feature is using the trees util. So you can see everything is going down. That's really important. If you want to make good affected analysis, you don't want to have arrows going up. So if your plant feature is importing something from the whole application, if you do a change here in the plant feature, it will trigger the whole application to be marked as affected. And because the application is importing all these different sections, everything will become affected. So you can only go down in that sense. This is the application if you look at it from a code perspective. And the cool thing is now, for example, I just ran my tests because I just fixed them. And if I'm now running my tests again, yarn test, you'll actually see that it's executing all of the tests, all of the different projects in parallel. And it's only running the tests again of the places where it thinks it's actually affected, because I did here a change in the overview component. It's running the dashboard feature, the banking dashboard, and the Kickstart Green tests. If I would just skip this and run the tests again, it will just get everything straight out of the cache. And same goes, for example, for yarn lint. Oh, yarn. It will just get everything out of the cache as well. So here you have your applications. This is the part that you can ship towards the customer. So that will actually be an artifact that you can deploy on a server. So for example, if you are later saying we are going to build 2 apps, we have one organization and one of the apps is containing everything, the banking application and as well the trees application. But you also want to create an application where only you can plant trees and the rest is just not being shown. You have the reusable libs. So here in the banking domain, you have all the different utils, features, UI elements, and you have the trees domain with everything needed for that. And here you have the share domain with everything you can import. The cool thing, yeah.
Last 30 seconds.
Last 30 seconds. Oh, you're being really strict. I'll finish up. Here you have also something to enforce this. So you can really create an architecture where you are saying these are the different domains, and something from the banking domain can import something from the shared domain, but not the other way around. Then you can, with the enforce module boundaries, you can actually say we only want to have the shared domain import things from the shared domain. And if you are doing something else, then it's just giving a linting warning. So it makes sure that the whole architecture that you are setting up is always consistent. Also prevents circular dependencies and those kind of things. You can really quickly generate libraries or those kind of things using NX schematics as well. I think a little bit quick, but I think that's the presentation. I have one more slide.
Yeah.
We can also do that for after the presentation. It's about one thing. If you're scaling this up, we just notice also at the client I'm working from now, you can run into some problems when scaling up, and there are some solutions to that as well. So I had one slide of that.
Yeah, you can take it.
Cool. I'll try to. So this is the starting point of your. When you are having an application where you are, for example, running yarn test, And test is just setting up, for example, Karma, Jasmine, Mocha, Jest, anything you name it. And the setting up of the whole command you are running is taking 1 minute, and then it's taking 15 minutes to execute all the tests. Then in total, your application is doing 16 minutes to run all the tests. If you are going to divide it in different libraries, then you can also run everything per library. But if there's no cache available, then you have to 5 times start yarn test, once for the account util, once for the shared domain util. Then so there's a little bit more overhead. So running everything in a row, all total, without any cache available, it will take more time. But it will save you time the moment when 2 of them are cached, because you don't need to run those 2, and it will only take less than 20 minutes. But when you are scaling it up, when you have multiple domains and you don't have any cache available, that's a problem we ran into. We had about more than 120 different libraries, and all of those libraries, if you are all building or all linting or all testing them, and even if the setup time is only 20 or 15 seconds, it will just really add up to the whole time your application is building. So it's not really maintainable. Then it might take an hour to run all the tests instead of 60 minutes. It will. One of the solutions that we found was actually introduce domains. So, for example, if you have a banking domain, tree domain, and a shared domain, and all those 100 projects are in those different domains, then if you don't have any cache, you only have to run the starting command for 3 different domains, and it will only add 2 minutes to your whole pipeline if you don't have any cache. If you do have cache, you directly already save time. But now comes the magic part. You can also run parallel with NX. So thinking about 3 domains, no caching, but running everything parallel, you are already finished in 8 minutes in total, because it can run all of the 3 domains at the same time. There might be a little bit more time because the CPU is a little bit more busy compared to the first time. So it might take 9 minutes or so. But that will also make sure that even if you have to build everything, test or lint everything, that you are still not using more time than your starting point. But this is something you have to optimize and have to make sure that you always are fine-tuning it. And it does use more resources, yeah. In that way, it's a balancing act a little bit on making sure you can use the affected analysis really strict. So if you divide everything in really small chunks, you can be really effective using the affected analysis. So if you do a small change, you only have to do a small build or a small deploy. But once you are once you have to build everything, then it becomes ineffective. That's it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Emiel. We have a few questions for you, but we will take them during our closing questions. We are running slightly out of time. Let's give a round of applause to Emiel for his very cool and awesome talk. We will take a break of 5 minutes and come back here. This meeting is still active. You can grab a coffee or a tea or a drink.
I'll get my water.
Meanwhile, we can even ask questions to Emiel.
Well, if we're asking questions, Emiel.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is, well, it does look like a balancing act, right? So if you want to use, well, except for the don't write inefficient code part, which you shouldn't do. it's all a matter of, well, if you want to do the whole test run every time, then of course that takes up more resources. If you decide that you don't schedule your unit test with every check-in, but only for a pull request, for example, that will already get you a lot of benefits in this part. But then you'll get the results back later. So in that sense, it's a lot of this is basically a balancing act.
Yeah, that's actually true. It's you can save a lot of time in a certain amount when, for example, you only make a small change and you have that small change really in one specific area of your application. I think there's someone at the door. Then it can save you a lot of time. At the other hand, when there are moments where you have to build or test or deploy everything, and then you also want to be efficient. So from that perspective, you have to choose a little bit on going really small, or and being really effective, or going really big and saving. Yeah. Yeah. Someone at the door. But yeah.
Yeah, so if we would take that one step further, then it would also be beneficial that if you trust your developers for small things that have a very low risk, you might just
Trusting developers? Never. What?
What? For example, with running linting, it normally took about 2 minutes to lint the whole application. Then we went to linting all the 140 libraries separately, and then it started costing 10 minutes. So it was not more efficient, it was actually taking up more time. Well, the moment you are only have, when the affected analysis said you only have to lint one application out of the 120 libraries, then it only cost 3 seconds. So then it saved a lot of time. But so then we went to the domain level, and now it's only costing 60 seconds to lint everything. And it's even less if you only have to lint the whole of the application. So it's really making choices on overall what is the most efficient.
Yeah, linting is already done a lot in in code, for example, already. So you might even discuss on whether you want it to be in your pipeline at all. Maybe you just want to skip it in your pipeline because your IDE has already done it.
It's not reliable because like engineers will just ignore it, and then if your pipeline breaks, then you have to fix it. You know, like people just don't want to fix it. But you can also do like a pre-commit that it will run the linter for you, and then no matter what, on each commit you do or before you push it, will have it linted. So then you can trust your developers and stuff more. But
it's well, that's a part of the agile mindset, right? And having people responsible for what they're doing. Well, that's basic. As a developer, we want to be responsible. So then you have to take that responsibility. And if you cannot carry it, will drag your ass back into waterfall.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice discussion for after the. But I somehow do agree with what you're saying. More responsibility for the developers, and some things you need to be strict on. So.
Yeah. So and then if you want to be responsible, then you would have to carry that responsibility. Of course, you cannot know everything at the start of your career, so things have to be learned. But yeah, if you have some responsible developers, and your team should have at least one, then you can have a conscience as a team and or develop your conscience.
Okay. I hope everyone is back. And meanwhile, I have pasted a link for our feedback form. We are not asking any your user data. We just want to improve us for next time. And I'll stop presenting. Now moving to the last and yet entertaining part of today's front-end architecture talk. we have Gaurav Sehrawat with his talk on ROCA. Please give him a round of applause.
Right.
Gaurav.
Thanks. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, can I get a show of hands to see if everyone is here or they still are in their bathroom break or toilet break? Okay, we are getting some hands. And I see people are not asleep by now, so that's also good. Cool. Let me share my screen and we can get started. Actually, I will also choose the cool mode, which is side by side. All right, I hope my slides are visible. Perfect. So let's get started. For a bit of interaction, I would like to ask if people have heard of ROCA before, or is this first time an alien terms to you all? Any raise of hands? Going once, going twice? No. Oh, wow. Then it's going to be fun. So let's get started. First of all, about me, I'm Gaurav. I work as Global Solution Architect, also as tech lead in my company. These are my trails on the internet, so feel free to follow me there or ask questions after the talk. So this is our agenda of the talk. First, we will get to know what is architecture, why care for it. We'll also then get into different front-end architecture, talk about modular monolith, and we'll focus more on integration of it because we already had a previous talk which talked about breaking it down into micro-frontends. We'll see various ways we can do this. There is client-side, there is cache-side, there is server-side integration. Then we will take a recap, and then we will go for questions. So you can also follow these slides right now. This is a QR code. If you scan it via your mobile, you would be redirected to a website. It's useful if you want to check some snippets or something. All right. So let's take a step back. Why or what is an architecture before why? Well, I would not go in technical details, but a bit of philosophical. The decision you wish you could get right early in a project, sometimes you see, oh, we are in a big technical depth. Why did it happen? It might be because you took wrong decisions on architect. Yeah, also defines most important aspects of internal design of a software system. This is more of technical thing. There's a very good article from Martin Follower. You should check it out. So my talk is independent of framework, technology, or tooling. It's just a different paradigm. So why this talk? It's just a different paradigm to be aware of. You might not need it right now, but you might need it in future. So yeah, it won't solve all the problems, but it might help you in few. Right. So thing is, why do we need a good architecture? Right. What's the problem statement? And here the good architecture is modular architecture we are talking about. Right. What's our problem statement? We need speed. That's our prime motivation, actually. We need speed. Speed where, you might ask, right? Well, speed in every domain. We want to make our project managers or business happy that we are delivering things very fast. We want to make our customers happy that we are delivering the website to them very fast. Also, bit of happiness in developer side. They would have small team size when they are working on modular. And also render in the browser, right? It's a win-win for everyone. Now, this is the graph we should remember. to take decision. So over a period of time, if it's a messy project, you would see the brown line. Over the period of time, you would not be delivering much of functionality, but it would take a lot of time. But if it's a good architecture, over a period of time, you might take some time, but you would deliver a lot of cumulative functionality. There is a breakpoint here, which tells that initially, and good architecture might take some time, to make the foundation strong. But in the end, it pays off big time. So yeah, let's see what all can be there, right? Now we are getting into things which are possible. We have the problem statement clear. So we can have a front-end monolith like this. So just big old website. And then you can have a monolith backend, or you can also have microservices. It doesn't matter since we are focusing on front-end. Then we have self-contained services. So your website might be divided into different domains. For example, your blog might be on a different server. Your checkout and orders might be on different server. Then you might have a Kafka and stuff. So these are self-contained services. Or you could have a front-end module strategy, which Daniel talked in the first talk. So ROCA is applicable for these two scenarios, self-contained services and a micro module service paradigm. Okay, let's try to see where it makes sense to go for a monolith, where it makes sense to go for a modular, right? So if you have a small project, right, let's say you have your own blog, you definitely don't want to make it a micro frontend, right? You can do it yourself. Just create a blog page, single page app, and it's better than anything there. Also, if you want to save efforts of dividing things into microservices, one developer, it does not make sense. You need to have small teams, but not individual person for microservices. Why modular, right? Well, here, if multiple team can work on the same UI, let's say same website, not UI, they would be working in parallel mode, right? And parallel just, doubles, triples, depends on the team size. So you would be having great speed. Change can be broken down into concerning domain logic, and change in domain can be implemented by modifying and deploying just one service. So one team can just fix one bug, and then it will be just one deployment instead of whole, big deployment. So which architecture is better suited for front-end integration? So we are talking about the architecture here, and I'm presenting you ROCA, which is resource-oriented client architecture. So it's a set of recommendation from front-end modularization and integration. So we can just look at these recommendations. There will be code snippets and stuff. So let's see. Yeah, we already talked about these benefits, and these are coming back again. So yeah, the best one is that free choice of front-end technology, right? So there are new frameworks coming. You can start doing one thing in one another. Though I would not recommend it, but yeah, it's just there. Okay, so let's say you watch the first talk and you have modularized your front end now, right? And there are many ways you can do it. We want to focus on front-end integration. So what do I mean by front-end integration is, how would you deliver this thing? How would you deliver your broken down code as a single piece to the customer, because they want to see it as one go, right? So there is client-side integration, which can be done in 3 ways. Actually, it can be done in more ways. So you can do it via links. So you can have hyperlinks attached to, if it's a self-contained services, you can attach links between these 2 services. I will show a demo on that. We can also see the redirect approach where, for example, you go to meetup.com and you want to sign up not via an email, but with, let's say, Gmail or Apple ID, right? It's also a client-side integration. So you use OAuth2, and then it goes to third party and redirects you back. We can use transclusion also. So it means that you want to consume some other content and then just embed it in your website. So yeah, integration demo time. So this is a sample case study, actually. It's deployed here right now, but I will talk about this diagram here. So as per this diagram, we have one main application which is visible to customers. And then they would have links to different, as they navigate. So first of all, what is this application? This is it's a insurance application. So you would have to report damages. You would have to give your address and show letter describing the report of the damages and stuff, right? So what would happen? First of all, you would see that there is a common library assets. So you would need to do that so that there is less redundancy, right? And then this common asset would be used by these all 3 sample applications. It can also be used by main application, right? So let's see one more slide. We saw integration with redirects. It's a simple example. You go to Meetup and then sign up for that. I'm going to show you how the transclusion works, because that's where the sophistication is involved, right? So you basically want to embed HTML snippets, and you would be using JavaScript for this. So for example, I present you this snippet, and this snippet is basically, actually, to know where this snippet is used, let's click on this. Let's go back. Let's go here, right? So let's choose the language also first. Yeah. So if you see this is a result of transclusion. This whole thing is hosted on a different microservice, or I would say self-contained services. And we are fetching the data from there using this URL. So if I open this URL, let me just quickly open this. Right. So this is the content which you are basically rendering here, right? So if you notice that this same content is, and how would you do that? You would write your own component. Let's say this component is present here. I have provided the link. What does this component do? It takes the href and then it basically renders it in a table format. Then there are some error messages if service is down. Let's say you are doing a deployment and or something goes wrong with the post box, right? Still the main application would be running fine. Yeah, so that's there, an example of transclusion. Regarding links, so for example, you have, you're going to file a report, let's say, and when you report a damage, you would notice that it goes in a different URL. It goes in Crimson Damage, right? And when you fill it back, it comes back here. So this is kind of linking, a very simple, naive way, I would say, but just there. Yeah, if you want to do it JavaScript way, you can also write your own code. This is a sample code to render content of the link. So you have anchor tag, and for each function, for each link, you basically render it in a div, and the content is the content of the anchor. That's one. There are other integration methods. Actually, we have been doing this. This is nothing new. You might be aware of this. For example, iframe, right? Stripe does iframe for payments, right? When you want to accept a payment on your website, you don't even feel like you're going to Stripe. It just pops up, right? It's because they are using an iframe. Yeah, you can embed objects. You can embed a video. You can embed a PDF and all that thing. So we have been, kind of doing this unknowingly. But if we want to maximize power of everything, it would be really cool. So far, we have talked about problem. We have talked of half of solution, which is client-side integration. But server-side integration is actually pretty cool because that's where the big players actually do their work. Because servers can scale a lot. They can do a lot of optimization at their end, right? First is cache side optimization. We have edge side includes. Edge side include, ESI is actually a language from WT.org. And we will see some example how it works. But there is a whole specification you can go through. So it assembles resources in HTTP client. And then when time comes to serve those resources, it would check whether it's cached or not. And then it would immediately, without firing or hitting the server, it would just serve from the cache. So yeah, there is enormous performance improvement with these. A lot of big players do that. Akamai, CD, and Cloudflare all uses ESI. So how do we implement that? You can use actually Varnish. Varnish, there are a lot of other softwares, but for an example, I'm giving you Varnish. So Varnish is a cache, but it also manipulates ESI. So you can either cache everything or you can cache few things with the ESI language. Let's see an example of ESI. So here you would see that you have common header, you have common navbar. Well, first of all, these might not change very often, right? So you would probably cache them, and when you cache them, you can just fire it from your cache side, and the page would be super fast. There is another method of using ads. You can just inject ad from the cache and not do server side. So bit of code, right? We promise code. So this is a Varnish server configuration. So we have two backends. You would see here. The important link here is this one, which basically tells that if I hit a /common, I would redirect it to common server. But the important or the exciting part is this cache block. We enable ESI here, and then we set TTL. TTL is the cache page. So the navbar header, they are going to be cached for 30 seconds, and they're going to be served from this. Then we have a grace period. If a server goes down, you can still serve the whole website, cached website from this. It's pretty straightforward, pretty cool. We also have server-side integration, and like big players, Facebook, Zolando, they do this. I'm going to show that. So Zolando architecture, Mosaic, is based on server-side integration. Their whole architecture is this. So they have internet, then Skipper, I'm not going to talk about all of them. The important thing is which combines the integration is layout service. Layout service is Tailor, and Tailor does most of, I would say, heavy lifting for it, right? So Tailor is a layout service that bring microservices to front end by composing website of various fragments. And it does at server side. And then you can cache it. So it's like, you can combine technologies. And Zolando does it, and as per their case studies, their website conversion rate just increase a lot with this. Facebook also does it. They call it Big Pipe, and Tailor is inspired by that. I can give an example of SSI. This is a standard Nginx configuration. You would see that we are using some directives to filter out the routes. The important part here, if you want to enable, is do SSI on, and then you would use SSI tags. So it depends on the server what kind of things you are going to do. Yeah, you can learn more about Mosaic. It's a pretty cool project. So let's do a recap. We are also out of time. So benefits of ROCA: clean architecture, browser optimization, HTTP GET can be cached, high speed resiliency. Well, on other hand, SPA allows redundant logic, and SPA is actually better suited for complex UI. For example, Gmail or Google Maps. You cannot do that with Micro-Frontend. So yeah, that's there. But people are moving to Micro-Frontend, so give it a thought. There are some challenges, that you might need extra infrastructure for server side and stuff. Your UI might not be, uniform across services, but then you have to develop a strategy of using common modules and stuff. So remember, again, why do we need a good architecture? Is because of this graph. You have to predict the future and not live in the moment, but it's good also to live in the moment. Doesn't hurt. Thanks everyone for joining and listening to the talk. If you have questions, I would be happy to take them. And that's me. We call it a wrap.
Thank you, Gaurav. It was well within the time, around the time.
Right.
Please give him a round of applause. And if you have any questions, shoot him. I don't see any questions yet. They are still taking all this information in. But nevertheless, I'll take the presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Then he went out and he came in again. Okay, share.
I'm here. I'm not sure what happened. I was just like kicked out of the call. Like my app just crashed.
Yeah. Okay. So these were the 3 talks today. If you have any questions for Daniel, Emiel, and Gaurav, we can have them now. And for now, see you next time in the next talk, which is coming in a couple of months on deep dive sessions. Thank you. I will open the presentation for all the questions for Gaurav, Emiel, and Daniel. I think Flores and Edwin had a few questions for Daniel.
Yeah, we can just start.
Yeah, maybe you can stop the recording and then we can start the questions.
Right. Will do.